My name is Haley Jones, and I am presenting a research proposal designed to gather data regarding two phenomena in psychology: cognitive dissonance and the placebo effect. To begin with, it is important to understand these two phenomena in psychology. Cognitive dissonance occurs when an individual wishes to ease the discomfort they feel when a situation arises that contradicts what they previously thought they knew. The placebo effect, on the other hand, is an effect applied to an individual through a substance or procedure for the sole benefit of its psychological or physiological effects. As the world faces the chaos that has arisen from the COVID-19 pandemic, people are constantly facing the fear of getting sick with this deathly illness. As people become more worried about the illness through a reverse placebo effect, the individuals are also convincing themselves that they may be feeling certain symptoms of the disease prior to even receiving confirmation that they have it through a positive test result. On the other hand, when those individuals do get tested and receive a negative test result, the symptoms they once convinced themselves they had disappear without a trace. This employment of cognitive dissonance within the brain allows the individuals to enter the state by reassuring themselves that the previous symptoms were actually not important. Because of this interesting phenomenon, I believe it would be very helpful to study cognitive dissonance and the placebo effect as it is impacting everyday people. The following research study presented on the next few slides is designed to test these. The research question at hand pertains to the following: does an individual who listed experiencing symptoms prior to being tested for COVID-19 continue to experience those symptoms after receiving a negative result, and how does cognitive dissonance and the reverse placebo effect change how an individual remembers those symptoms that seem to present themselves prior to learning that they were free of the illness? After reviewing important evidence in the outline study, the results should show a clear consensus that through cognitive dissonance, individuals will experience a placebo effect in terms of being unable to identify any remaining previously indicated symptoms and attribute those symptoms to the specific virus that they are meant to signify, coronavirus in this case. The population of the study is the general public of adults, while the target population are college-age students that experience the effects of cognitive dissonance and placebo. The study population consists of a random sample of participants gathered from the target population, college-age individuals between the ages of 18 and 24 of all races, genders, and ethnicities that have been tested at any of NC State's COVID-19 testing centers. There will be two conditions: students who test positive and students who test negative. The control group will be the students who test positive for the virus, seeing as the symptoms felt prior are confirmed through the positive result to have a legitimate basis. The two groups will also be split into male and female subgroups in order to prevent any confounds in terms of biological sex. Any individuals that answer to not having felt symptoms prior to testing will be excluded from the data of the study. Next, the design of this experiment is comprised of 3 stages in order to record data presented at each step in the process. First, participants that meet the requirements as outlined above will be asked to fill out a brief survey in regards to what symptoms they have prior to testing, when these symptoms presented themselves, and at what point they decided to schedule an appointment to test themselves for COVID-19. A day after they've been tested, the participants will be asked to complete another brief survey composed of questions to determine how their symptoms are persisting and if any other symptoms have presented themselves. Finally, depending on the result of the participant receives, they will be asked to complete a third survey. For the positive results, participants will be given a survey similar to the first two, which is meant to determine what symptoms they had prior to the determined result when they presented themselves in the individual, and any symptoms that are presenting themselves in the participant after receiving the positive test result. For negative results, they will receive a survey meant to focus on whether they believe the symptoms they described prior to testing are due to coronavirus or could have been caused by something else such as stress. There will be 3 surveys to be taken by the study's participants. The first will be comprised of questions to determine if an individual has felt symptoms of COVID-19 prior to being tested, what those symptoms are, and at what point before the test they presented themselves. Participants will then be sent a follow-up survey after being tested to determine whether there have been any developments in their cases. Finally, if the individual tested positive for the virus, they will be asked to fill out one type of survey in order to determine the control group's data, while the participants who tested negative will be asked to fill out a slightly different survey. These surveys have been designed to prevent compromised data through the surveys. Questions have been designed to be clear and concise while also avoiding double negatives, bias, and loaded questions. Since word choice easily impacts the responses of participants taking surveys, neutral phrases were also very important in the construct of the survey. Finally, all participants are asked to take the survey, and any individual that does not fully complete all three will be excluded from the study. The research will begin with each participant filling out the first survey before they are tested to determine what symptoms each individual is experiencing. In addition, any individual that has not experienced symptoms prior to testing will not be included in the data of this research study. After following procedure to be tested for COVID-19, participants will then complete the second survey, receive their results, and finally complete the third survey. The data collected from the surveys will be analyzed and compared in terms of how participants recall which symptoms were present before and after determining whether they actually had COVID-19. After conceptualizing the data, the results will support the hypothesis if the results show participants in the experimental group differing from the control group in terms of recalling their previously expressed symptoms of COVID-19 as determined by the first and second surveys. There are limitations within the study. First, this study focuses on surveys taken by participants that have been tested by COVID-19, which relies on self-evaluation. In addition, these surveys are being emailed to the participants, which may result in participants not receiving the surveys or forgetting to take them at a later date. Finally, this research is strictly designed to collect data from participants tested for COVID-19 and may not be generalizable to other viruses or diseases in accordance with cognitive dissonance and the placebo effect. In future research, it is important to continue to understand if cognitive dissonance and the placebo effect can be applied to patients experiencing different diseases in which distinguishable symptoms are present. In order to generalize the findings of the study to other individuals, it is important to determine how this data can predict future research. Finally, the results of this study should provide important implications of the idea of cognitive dissonance and the placebo effect within an individual. Seeing as cognitive dissonance allows a person to talk themselves off the edge in a sense, individuals can convince themselves that they never had something to relieve the psychological discomfort a certain situation presents them. If this occurs, the placebo effect occurs in reverse and makes it seem as though the individual never really experienced the symptoms that they once claimed to have. Thus, an individual reverses the conviction they once had in one idea to the conviction that the idea never should have existed. Thank you for watching.